Good morning, Carol Johnson,
Good morning, Bob Ponce.
and happy birthday to Malcolm X.
Yes, happy birthday. Thank you, my brother.
And in his spirit, we will try to deal with this COVID thing by any means necessary.
Absolutely. Interestingly, I was there when he was assassinated.
You were there. I didn't know that.
Yeah, my father had me, and he said to the brothers at the back, the wife has the sons. I got the girl today. And it was a prophetic word because he said, this may be the only chance I get to see Malcolm. And so they said, no kids are allowed. But then the other guy said, but Brother Malcolm's children are here. He said, okay, well, of course, they were in the front row.
Mm-hmm.
He said, well, just stay in the back. And my dad had his friend that was about 6'7". They called him Stretch.
Mm-hmm.
So we were way in the back. And I heard the confusion. I think the only reason why I didn't actually see what happened is because of the confusion in the back. And it was right behind us. So I kept looking back. Stretch had me up on his shoulders. And I kept looking back and looking back and looking back. And then I heard the shots. And he just grabbed off his shoulders and ran us. They kind of pushed us out the door because we were all the way to the extreme back. And, I didn't find out till later on that, he was actually killed.
Wow.
But, yeah.
So, on to the COVID news. So the biggest news today is that the mask restrictions in New York have been almost completely eliminated. Let's talk about exactly what they are. Um, most businesses will be able to operate. Well, all right. So they say 100% capacity, but it's not really 100% capacity. So they're basically saying most businesses will be able to return to 100% capacity, but only if they can still maintain 6 feet of distance between individuals or groups. And this is true for businesses as well as houses of worship. Um, Vaccinated people will no longer have to wear masks indoors or outdoors in most circumstances, but individual businesses are free to make their own rules, and they can make stricter rules. Masks are continue to be mandatory on public transit and in schools from pre-kindergarten to grade 12, in homeless shelters, correctional facilities, nursing homes, and healthcare settings. So that seems to be what the new setup is. And there's some other thing they're saying where restaurants will be allowed to place tables closer together to reach 100% capacity if 5 foot tall solid partitions are placed in between them. And theaters and other large venues, including ballparks, are permitted to return to full capacity instead of 1/3 full if they require patrons to show proof of vaccination. So now we're getting into, I guess, vaccine passport type of range where here are situations where you would have to show your vaccine card. So that's what we're dealing with now. Now, interestingly enough, New Jersey has not followed suit. They are still keeping their mask protocols in place. So, what's your thoughts, Carol Johnson? Too soon or?
I think it's too soon.
Mm-hmm.
And I get Jersey because if we remember, Jersey had sort of a late surge where it was
Mm-hmm.
hitting everybody, and then all of a sudden it hit Jersey. It packed. They got hit with a wallop, out of nowhere,
Mm-hmm.
and the numbers jumped so high. The numbers and the deaths began to jump so
Mm-hmm.
quickly. So I understand that. So they're like, no, we're not doing that again. I think being that the weather is getting warmer at this point, I think it's a little too soon.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I would not have put those restrictions on there. And even Fauci is saying, it's too soon.
Mm-hmm.
That the capacity, it should remain where it is. That, he did agree that when you're outside, you can remove the mask if you're fully vaccinated. If you're inside with people who haven't been fully vaccinated, you still don't need to be in large crowds, and you
Mm-hmm.
still need to maintain distance,
Mm-hmm.
with those people. Because the one thing about inside, you really don't know. You really don't know who's been vaccinated, so you have to remain some distance. You can't be packing people in. You know,
Yeah, and I mean this whole thing with like the 5 foot plexiglass, it's like it's airborne. You can't it could go over the plexiglass. I just
duh.
doesn't that,
Duh.
that doesn't I don't know. It doesn't seem to me be I don't know. It's
I mean, it is getting warmer, but uh, you can still go and get takeout and find a nice little area in a park. A lot of
mhm,
the parks have tables. Take your antibacterial wipes and wipe off the table and sit down outside. But
mhm,
a lot of these little, I call them little haciendas that they have for people to sit in, they are so small,
mhm,
and you've got 4 and 6 tables in this little space. Even with that barrier, I don't see the difference.
mhm,
I really don't see the difference because all of those germs are just circulating. Most of them ain't closed. So if they open the door, there's not a lot of air circulating in there with 8 people, at least
mhm,
8 people or sometimes more,
mhm,
having a meal.
mhm,
So I would rather grab something like we did the other day, grab some coffee and some mini donuts
mhm,
and sat outside and enjoyed, the fresh air.
mhm,
But I would just say proceed with caution, you know.
mhm. So I mean, the good news is just taking a quick look at the hospitalization rates and the testing rates is that they're definitely down. They're down to levels around what they came down to, last year. Um, but we have to remember we saw a surge when the weather got cold. So I would have liked to see them, you know, keep the mass restrictions up for another at least 3 weeks a month, just to, because the other concern I have is that because we're in New York City, um, we get the rates down here, and then summertime comes and everybody starts traveling, and you get all these people from other places, other states, who bring it back here. We get it down, and then somebody else brings it right back, with tourists, and but this is where we are.
Yeah. You haven't heard a lot about the variants lately, but that doesn't mean they've disappeared.
Hmm.
So I agree. I would have liked to have waited. I would have wanted to wait at least until summer set in,
Right.
which is not that far off.
Hmm.
Because people have already become very relaxed. I'm looking at a lot of people that have been masked up, and already they're going under their chins,
Hmm.
and they're getting on elevators. And I had to ask them, excuse me, you have to pull that mask up. Well, we don't have to wear, but you have to wear them on the elevator.
Well, I mean, I think at this point, we're going to see over the next week or two, just, we, it's the psychology. There was an opinion piece in MedPage, which is one of the of sources that we keep track on for COVID information. It's a very doctor run medical journal, and there's an opinion piece where they're just saying what was the CDC thinking, because I feel like the idea was they wanted to create an incentive for um, the people who haven't gotten vaccinated to say, see, look, you don't have to wear a mask, but you just got to get your vaccination. And they're trying to do that. But the problem with that is that, the people who are diehard about not getting vaccinated, or we're also diehard about not wearing masks. And it's like, if you say, okay, we don't have to wear masks anymore, you know, I don't think that necessarily moves people into the category of getting vaccinated, you know.
Yeah.
And the
It'll be much.
problem also is the whole thing of, you know, people follow what people are doing. If everybody is wearing a mask, people continue to wear masks. But now if everybody stops wearing masks, we have roughly half the population who has been vaccinated and half is not. And you're going to find that, just everybody's going to stop wearing masks. And so we'll continue to kind of look at the numbers and see if we see any post unmasking surges or whatever. Right now, the numbers are down, and that's a good thing for everybody. And we want to keep it that way. So we'll continue to, we'll continue to monitor these things, and maybe we're close to a time where we don't have to do this every week. You know,
Right. Right.
which I don't, I don't have a problem with
Listen,
that.
there are some Wednesdays.
Yeah,
Like,
it's like
Mom, I don't want to go to school.
right.
I mean, really, can I just stay home today?
Yeah.
But we get up. Listen, we've been working hard through this year. We worked hard before, but the pandemic has really been challenging. But
Mhm.
it also makes me grateful for, paying attention to the things that I learned and practicing them.
Mhm.
You know, so we're looking now, and summer is approaching, and as always, you know, um, we've got heat waves, the possibility of heat waves, which
Mhm.
still in a pandemic, which would change that whole dynamic.
Mhm.
So I think again we go back to sort of being prepared to shelter in place.
Mhm.
That this is the time to start purchasing, extra water, extra food, non-perishable items, food
Mhm.
items, and you know, getting that straight, taking care of your sanitary needs and what have you now, you know, and just be prepared. Because we
Mhm.
saw when the pandemic happened how crazy people got hoarding toilet paper and all those things. You can do that now. Start getting
Mhm.
it now. Hoarding
Mhm.
all kinds of things. You can do that now.
Mhm.
Put it under your table if you got extra space in your cabinet. You know, I cleaned out my whole cabinet in my break front. I realized, I said, I have all this stuff that I keep saying, oh, I'm going to keep, I'm not going to use that stuff. I just started cleaning stuff out. So now that whole bottom is nothing but, instead of a half of it being emergency prep, the whole area is.
Mhm.
You know? So this is the time to get some extra stuff. It's not expensive. We're not going places. We're not traveling to Atlantic City. Take that money you would have used every month to go to Atlantic City and go to the dollar store. Pick up these things. Get these dollar flashlights. Put them around your house, particularly at your bedside. The places that you frequent most in your house, your bed, your bedroom, your kitchen, your living room. They're like a buck.
Mhm.
Sometimes you can get 2 or 3 of them in a pack.
Mhm.
The LED, they last longer than the ones that you would use the batteries with. So,
Mhm.
this is the time to start stocking up so that the shelves won't be empty and people won't be panicking because you don't know when an emergency is going to hit. And just because we're in a pandemic doesn't mean that the other things are not waiting to happen. So the thing
Right.
is preparation, mitigating, trying to make sure that you lessen the severity of whatever happens, and be prepared, because now you got crime. The crime rate is up. So even before, when people lived in small buildings with maybe 10, 15 tenants in the building, they run in and out if there was a blackout. That This is not the time to do that. You need to be able to stay in your house
Hmm.
and be safe.
Yeah. I mean, I hope that people, you know, take a step back and look at everything that we learned from this pandemic. And one of the things that's so important is to understand that, you know, in an emergency, the things that we take for granted all of a sudden are no longer available. And then, if you haven't prepared for it, you're in a serious situation. You know, you remember, it's hard to remember a year ago when this thing started, I really like 14 months ago. um, there was, they weren't talking about masks because there weren't enough masks. Because
Mhm.
the real truth was that after, when the pandemic hit, the first supply of masks went to China, and so they
Right.
were telling people don't get masks because we only have enough for the healthcare workers. Well, you know, Carol and I had masks because we had them in our go bags. We didn't have to go to the store to get masks. We had N95 masks that have been part of our emergency preparedness. So the thing is that, okay, let's look at what happened this past week. Um, when we've had these gas shortages, because all of a sudden the Colonial Pipeline gets hacked, and all of a sudden all the gas on the East Coast, there's a shortage. Um, you see the same thing in terms of food shortages. What is your plan? If there's a shortage of food, if there's a shortage of water, if there's a shortage of gasoline, there's shortage of power, blackouts. You know, none of these things are going away because of a vaccine. So the mindset of being prepared is not just all about COVID. It's about prepared for whatever can come down the pipeline.
Right.
So.
And the interesting thing about it is when COVID hit, it hit so hard. We were talking about pandemics. We were always talking about preparing for public health emergencies. That was all part of it.
Hmm.
But the things that we focused on basically was like extreme heat, things like that, which is an emergency. It happens yearly. Lots and lots of seniors die yearly from extreme heat. And so people don't even realize that. We always have the chance of blackouts and what have
Hmm.
you, storms and um, hurricanes, different things like that, which create flooding. So the preparation period is to be prepared for no matter what. It's not like
Hmm.
you're preparing for a pandemic or you're preparing for a storm. You are
Hmm.
just prepared, because this process is what will get you through whatever comes.
Hmm.
So during that time when the governor was telling seniors and people with underlying illnesses, you should try to shelter in place as much as you can. This is what we were talking about. And being that it's not over, and the summer goes into hurricane season, and you leave hurricane season, actually, while you're in hurricane season, there's a strong possibility of blackouts. Most people don't realize that sometimes we're faced with 3 and 4 emergencies at the same time. But
Hmm.
because they don't recognize it, they won't get prepared. But if the pandemic has not showed you what preparation should look like, that's a little scary.
Hmm.
That is a little scary if you haven't learned some lessons, some hard lessons during this time. So, whatever it is that your needs are, whatever you need for your household, for your household members, in order to shelter in and be sustained, these are the things that you need to be focusing on now. Make that plan now. You know,
Hmm.
don't plan later, because when you're in the middle of an emergency, That is the worst time to try to figure out a plan. It's
Right.
almost impossible.
And blackouts are up 60% since 2015, and the experts are saying that the deadliest climate related event we could have is a blackout during an intense heat wave. And that's, as we're going into summertime, you know, prepare yourselves. We got to prepare for that.
Yeah. And a lot of people will not be running around during the summertime. They're still going to be laying low
Hmm.
because they recognize the severity of this. You know, some folk is like, okay, it's over. Let's just go. Let's party. But
Hmm.
especially with being virtual and people are still virtual, people will not be traveling. Some people will not be traveling. They'll be having their family reunions virtually. You
Hmm.
know, with summertime, people use extreme amount of emergent of their utilities, for air conditioning and fans.
Hmm.
Excuse me. So you're gonna have a lot more people inside. That's gonna put a lot more pressure on those grids.
Hmm.
So I mean, these are things that we need to be concerned with. But I realize that when you're prepared, the concerns are so greatly lessened that even if you go to make a move that may not quite be the right move, quickly you will stop and say, wait a minute, that's not it. I need to do this. But if you know nothing, it's difficult to do anything. And generally, if you don't know,
Hmm.
all the moves that you make in the beginning will be the wrong ones.
Hmm.
So, these courses are online. You can go to New York City Emergency Management. You can get extreme heat pamphlets about extreme heat. You can get pamphlets that tell you about pandemics. You can also get your emergency plan that will tell you exactly what needs to be in a go bag in the event that you do have to leave your home, and how to shelter in place the things that you need in your home to shelter in place. A lot of us have electric can openers. Well, now you have no electricity. So how you gonna open that can of peas? And how you gonna heat them up? So I mean, these are the things that we don't think about because we don't have to. But also, we're trying to say, be prepared, be prepared, be ready, and be prepared.
So we should also mention that that they now have a vaccine program that is occurring in Subway, Penn Station, and Metro North stations. Um, and they started a pilot program last week that evidently ran well, and so now they're expanding it. In particular, they have one location, 125th Street in Harlem. I believe it's at the Metro North Station. They also have one East 180th Street in the Bronx. These locations are open from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. Now, they're not saying, but we recommend. Remember, anyone who's getting vaccinated, um, you should be waiting at the vaccinations site at least 15 minutes after the vaccination. This is just a precaution because that's the period that anybody who has any type of allergic reaction to the vaccine, it generally happens in that 15-minute time period. So standard protocols are supposed to be that there's a waiting area where you can be in for 15 minutes. I do not know if if these waiting areas are there in these subway and train station vaccination pop-ups, but we just encourage you to just use common sense precautions when getting vaccinated to make sure that wait that 15 minutes and give it an opportunity to take hold and make sure that there are no issues in your jab, as they say.
Right. And I, notice that there are places that are not making people wait. But even if they don't suggest it, you should still hang around. You know, if you're in a pharmacy or whatever, and there's no place for you to wait, or they don't suggest that you wait or tell you you should wait, you should wait. You know, don't leave the store. Just even if you just move around in the store, but don't leave the site in case something happens. You'll still be at that site. You know, and if there are any reactions, you know, they'll deal with it.
So I think that's all we really have to report on today. Um, we're glad that the city, the state, and the country, and ideally the world is getting more healthy. And but we continue to advise people to use common sense. Keep your protocols going a little while longer. Don't
Yeah,
just jump out there. Let's watch these numbers. Let's make sure they go down for real, and just let's practice caution and common sense a little while longer. Don't feel pressured. Do what you need to do to make sure that you're feeling safe, and we'll continue to give you the best available information um, on what's going on with COVID as well as every other emergency.
right. Absolutely. So as always, you know, stay safe. Don't,
Yep.
you know, let's not think that we're out of the woods yet, because
Hmm.
we're not. We're getting better, but we're not out yet. So to keep it that way, like Bob said, maintain those protocols.
Yep.
We've done it all this time. What's a little
Hmm.
more time, you know?
Right. And for those of us who have made it through all this, congratulations. Particular congratulations to all of the community activists who worked hard to make sure that people got food, people got PPE, people got kids got devices to use for remote learning. There's been such a um, groundswell of community um, cooperation and support during this, and I'm really proud to be a part of this community of Harlem, and see what people have done to protect themselves. And we did it when we weren't necessarily getting all the support from our government agencies, but we supported each other. So um, pat yourself on the back, and and let's keep that spirit alive. You know, by any means necessary.
That's right. We didn't give up and we didn't give in.
Right.
Continued to fight. And that's always been the spirit of the people, to fight.
Yeah.
So if ever there was a time that you thought that the 50s and the 60s protests and demonstrations, those were fighting mechanisms, you know, fighting what was necessary for our communities. But we saw it like never before in this age from this level. You know, it's one thing to fight about, you know, the injustices and everything, but now fighting, literally fighting for your life, where it could have taken anybody at any time could have been taken out because of this pandemic. It could have taken our whole entire families in one swoop. But people fought, they stayed vigilant, and you know, we have, by God's grace, we made it through. You know, so we want to keep that momentum up. We want to
Yep.
keep making it through. But
Mhm.
again, it taught people how to help people who never reached out before, learned how by watching others.
Mhm.
So it's a spirit that we need to just keep up, period. We shouldn't wait till we're in an emergency circumstance to do that. We need to
Mhm.
still look out for our elders. We need to still look out for our youth. We need to still look out for all those people that were suffering through this past year. Let's keep that up. Relationships have been formed, bonds have been formed like never before. You
Mhm.
know, with your next door neighbor. You know, people have bonded in a way. Let's not forget that. Let's not lose that momentum,
Mhm.
because something else is coming down the pipe. And again, we don't come to scare you, we come to prepare you. But there's always something else coming down the pipe. And that's all the more reason why I look at this pandemic and say, this was a growing experience. It was a wake-up call. Like these
Mm-hmm.
are the things that people been telling you, we've been saying to do, prepare. And now you see why. But don't
Mm-hmm.
act like it's over. Because there's always another one coming down the pipe. But if this wasn't an education, I don't know what was. So you're right. Kudos to everyone. I'm done.
All right. We are out. Thanks for joining us.